Hello and welcome to Jackson's Job. Today we're going to talk about our sourdough starter and when to feed it. This is a very well fed starter. It's full of bubbles, it's full of life, it's doubled in size. Everywhere you turn you see these nice pockets of air, even on the bottom. Now this is where it's going to start collapsing, but it's a perfect time to bake with it. Now this is when you very first feed your starter. It's going to be a very thick paste, it's not going to have any activity, and it's just going to look like this. It should be equal parts of weight of flour and water. That's only to help you when you go to bake the bread, you'll know the ratios. About 2 hours in, it should start to bubble up and it should start to rise. Now some people think that you should do the float test. This is not necessarily true, but it is a good guideline when you're following someone's recipe and they want you to use the float test. What that means is you put a bit of this in water and it should float on the surface just like it's doing here. But here is my sourdough starter later, doubled up in size even more, and this is the point where it's going to start to collapse. Is it still ready to use? Well, absolutely. It still floats, but if you notice, when you put it in the water, it's starting to sink a little bit. This just means that the gases are starting to collapse and your yeast is getting hungry. You can still use it at this stage. Continuing to wait another few hours, it has dropped half in volume. 8 hours into the process, it is now very hungry. It is almost back to the original size. As you can see, it rose up and then it collapsed again. If you put this into water, it sinks all the way to the bottom. A whole 24 hours later, this sourdough starter is now taking on a very liquidy look to it, and it's very thin. It's producing a lot of alcohol. Some people will tell you you can't make sourdough. However, it really just makes it a more rich sourdough. Now this one is 72 hours old. It is starting to dry out on the top and it has really sunk down, and it's even less than the original volume. It's very runny. At this point, if you were to drop it into some water, it will sink straight to the bottom. And not only that, it will start to dissolve almost immediately. You'll see it start to get really cloudy into the water. If you continue to not feed it, on day 7 it will start to look like this. This is alcohol that is being produced as it breaks down further. Some people even call it hooch, and you notice it's taking on this brownish grayish hue. You can salvage it at this point. You'll have to pour off the liquid and then feed it. It will be very runny and it will have almost this small little bubbles all throughout it. If you don't feed it at this point, you will end up with mold. Blue and black mold, or orange or red, is the kiss of death for your sourdough starter. Do not try to salvage it if it takes on an orange, blue, or red hue. You want to go ahead and just pitch it for safety reasons. It has grown way too many bad bacteria and it's not worth your health. Sourdough starter should always have a thick appearance and not runny like on the right. When it starts to get runny like the one on the right, you want to put in some flour and give it a good feed. Let me ask you, are you feeding your sourdough starter properly? Or do you neglect it from time to time like I do? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and as always, happy baking!